understand what we're going to be talking about, we need to be able to speak the same language. Over the years, I've made the mistake of assuming that everybody already knows some of these things, and it has been a problem every time, so we need to go over a few definitions. First, what is a note? A note is simply a symbol that represents a sound, any sound. However, music doesn't just deal with sounds, it deals with sounds that have pitch. So, what is pitch? Pitch, without getting too technical, is basically how high or how low a note sounds. For example, when you hear a flute or a violin, you're hearing high-pitched notes. When you hear a bass guitar or a tuba, you're hearing notes with low pitches. In music, the words for high and low pitches are treble for high pitches and bass for low pitches. It's caused by the frequency of the sound wave. Wait, that's exactly what I meant by getting too technical. The important part is that we recognize how the pitch changes from one note to the other. In other words, do the notes get higher or lower as we hear them? But it's not enough to simply notice if the notes are rising or falling. We need to be able to measure how far the notes have risen or fallen. So we need a way to measure pitch. Each note is separated by what's called a half step. If we go from any note up or down to the very next available note, we've gone the distance of one half step. 2 half steps is, not surprisingly, equal to 1 whole step. Using these measurements, we can accurately describe the exact difference in pitch from one note to another. This distance is called the interval between the 2 notes. This is a very important concept in music. There are a total of 12 notes in our system of music. We label them using the first 7 letters of the English alphabet, A through G. But we already have a problem. We only have 7 names for 12 notes. The other 5 notes are named by adding what are called accidentals to one of the natural notes. An accidental is a symbol that changes the pitch of a note. There are 5 of them. The first 2 and most important accidentals we need to know are called a sharp and a flat. When a sharp is added to a note, it raises the note's pitch by 1 half step. When a flat is added to a note, it lowers the note's pitch by 1 half step. These accidentals allow us to complete the list of all 12 notes. The other 3 accidentals are a double sharp, which raises a note's pitch by a whole step, and a double flat, which lowers a note's pitch by a whole step, and a natural, which cancels any previous sharp or flat on that note. Looking at the list of notes, we can see that most of the natural notes are separated by a whole step, with the gaps being filled by an altered note. Also, notice that the altered notes each have 2 names, one using a sharp and one using a flat. So the note in between A and B, for example, can be called either A sharp or A plus a half step, or B flat or B minus a half step. These notes can be thought of 2 different ways. Either it's 2 different notes that sound exactly the same or share the same pitch, or it's one pitch that has 2 different names. However we choose to think of them, these 2 notes are said to be inharmonic. A sharp and B flat are inharmonic notes. Which name we use is determined by a few different things, but typically if we're going up in pitch, we will use the name with the sharp, and if we're going down in pitch, we would use the name with the flat. There is more to choosing the correct name than just that, but we'll get back to that later. Also notice there are 2 places where there is not an accidental between 2 natural notes, between B and C and between E and F. If we continue our list and repeat the entire thing, we notice a pattern. There are 2 accidentals, then there are 3 accidentals. If you've ever looked at a piano, you can see this pattern clearly. The black keys make up the accidentals, while the white keys make up the natural notes. One of the very first things a piano student must learn is which notes are which, and the black keys are the way to find them. Finally, a scale is just a list of notes. There are lots and lots of different scales. Some use more notes than others, but each one is just a different list of notes. And that brings me to the point of this lesson. The name of the scale that uses all 12 notes is called the Chromatic Scale. This scale makes up our musical alphabet. And just like we must know the alphabet in order to learn words and then make sentences to express our ideas, We must know the musical alphabet before we start making more complicated or even simple musical ideas. This scale needs to be memorized. And that's it. That's the entire musical alphabet. Like I said earlier, it is very important that we memorize this list because it's the basis for everything else. I hope this video helps with that in some small way at least. In our next video, we'll be looking at the system we use for writing all of this and learn a little bit about reading music. Until then, thanks for giving me some of your time today. I really do appreciate it. Take care.